Open Minds Media. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome back to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I am the one that some people call Shane, and today for you guys, I have a bit of an all-over conversation, diving into some biblical stuff, diving into some ideas and philosophy on modern-day society. It's a really fun conversation. I think you guys will definitely enjoy it. It goes a little bit all over the place. There's a little bit of something for everybody. But before we get into this awesome episode today, a couple of quick news and updates as usual, of course, guys. First and foremost, the t-shirt giveaway is still going on. So if you guys want to go and enter in that, all you guys have to do is fill out a 10-question survey, and that all goes back towards hopefully making it so that the show can grow and improve, because your opinions go a long way, because I wouldn't be able to do the show without you guys, of course. So if you guys don't mind taking maybe like 5-10 minutes to fill out that survey for me, you guys could be entered to win a t-shirt, and again, I can keep growing the show to improve it and maybe even make it a little bit more of what you guys like out there, but I won't be able to do that without your guys' opinions, of course. And also talking about t-shirts, and of course you guys can pick up these 2 new shirts if you guys win that giveaway, but I have 2 brand new designs. The first one is this awesome design where you got an alien smoking a joint, opening up his third eye, sitting around a bonfire next to a Sasquatch drinking a beer, just hanging out, chilling, having a good time. No text needed on that one. I thought it was a really cool design, as is, kind of cartoony, but I think you guys will definitely enjoy it. And for the more conspiratorial-minded people, my other new design is this one that says break the mind control, where you have these cool marionette hands with this hypnotic spiral behind it. So if you guys haven't had a chance to yet, make sure you guys go and check those out, on top of a lot of other designs that I've created over the past year or so that I don't feel like I've given enough recognition to, one of which is my personal favorite, which is this play on words with Hunter S. Thompson with Fear and Loathing, where he's driving through the desert and says, "This is Bat Country." Instead, I flipped it over where you got Hunter S. Thompson as Sasquatch, and then you have Dr. Gonzo, aka Oscar Zeta Acosta, as Mothman, and it says this is Squatch Country because it's, you know, something that I always joke about every time we're driving through an area. It's a little bit squatchy, but if you guys haven't checked that out, like I said, one of my personal favorites, so don't forget to go and see if you guys like it. And if you guys enjoy catching bizarre Inquiries live, you guys can catch the next one of those on June 6th. That'll be happening at 7:15 Eastern Standard Time. You guys can catch that over on the Open Minds Media YouTube channel. And if you guys have any questions or clips that you guys would like to submit for that, make sure that you guys get them to me before that. And if not, we'll just end up using them on the next episode. And as far as the Patreon goes, again, I gave you guys a bit of an update on the last episode. So if you guys didn't catch that, go back and check that one out. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and hopefully a little bit will be unleashed each week as we go here. But soon enough, that will be up and running and a lot better than it was before, of course. And just one last thing before we get into the show. If anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, please email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com. Or you guys can also call or text me on the Open Minds Media hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys didn't catch that, it is available down in the show notes. And if you guys want to catch this show and Bizarre Encounters live, make sure you guys go and check out the Open Minds Media YouTube channel. Hit the bell notification up in the corner, and then you guys will get notifications anytime we go live. But if you guys don't want to do that, make sure you guys stay up to date on social media because I do post those schedules every single Monday. And of course, with everybody's schedules, they are bound to change, but you guys will get a general idea of when those live shows are going on. And every single thing that I mention and will mention throughout the show is all available in the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, writer and biblical researcher Adam Farris. How's it going today, man?
Hey, buddy. Appreciate you having me, man. How you doing?
Absolute pleasure to have you on the show, man. You're one of the few people that hit me up to actually come on and actually have a conversation, and I always enjoy those ones because usually it's people that have kind of got a little bit of the background of the show. They know what I dive into. So that being said, man, I'm definitely fascinated to dive into what we're going to dive into today because, like I said, it seems like it's you already had the intention of something that it would actually fit into the show. So always a plus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Adam Farris, biblical researcher and writer. 3 years ago, I was just a normal distribution center manager, going through a hard time and trying to figure out my next spot. And right in the middle of that, my father passed unexpectedly.
I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah, 63 years old. Again, unexpectedly, didn't see it coming. Super tough, very hard, obviously, on the family. Had to step up in a lot of ways that, I hadn't and didn't know I could. But through that is what ultimately was the calling to share the good news and to kind of put a better visual perspective to Bible stories. So it started out with just David and Goliath, the Five Stones book. But as I was working on that, and which will break down the whole story of that, I was just reading, and I wanted to. It was a spiritual thing, so I was being led. So I wanted to, learn more about God and whatnot. So as I'm reading the Bible, I'm just noticing things that I didn't know, never been told, things that don't make sense grammatically, and just by the normal story. So I ultimately started a blog just to, I wanted to share some of this crazy stuff too. So as these 3 years have gone by, which has just been a crazy development, it's changing constantly. I noticed a pattern in my writings it was a lot to do with David's mighty men, and way more giants and hybrids in the Bible. So it really kind of took me aback and showed me a different side of it. And then that's when it kind of clicked on why I was doing it and why it was David and Goliath to start with, was because that was a great segue into all the craziness that's been glossed over. And yeah, so I've just been focused on just sharing this craziness and just trying to get it out there. Dig your show and like-minded, and that's kind of what I'm looking for is a good way to help share the message with people that are interested and people that have the same questions as me. So yeah, that's kind of why I reached out and wanted to holla.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, man. Definitely some fascinating stuff to dive into because even the David and Goliath story, it's one of those things where it's like, it seems like it's kind of like a certain community of like Christians or even researchers that are talking about the whole giant phenomenon. But yet, even within like the normal Christian Catholic paradigm, like that is a regularly talked about story that everybody knows from the time that you're a little kid. Like everybody knows it. It's one of those things that it's just kind of glazed over the fact that Goliath is a giant. Like, a lot of the same people that are like, oh yeah, we don't really want to put too much thought into giants are the same people that have retold this story a million times for the message behind it, not thinking of the aspect of like, we are literally telling a story about a giant here and just completely ignoring the fact that, where are the rest of them? Why is this guy here? How did this all get to this point? Like, there's just, everybody's so focused on David that there's so much more focus that could be put on Goliath, and there's probably a bunch of fascinating aspects to dive into behind that. But I mean, for a lot of people, it seems like that's probably one of the first biblical interactions of a giant that most people have heard of, or assumably basically everybody that knows anything about the Bible. That's one of the first stories.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it perfectly, and that's growing up. I grew up in the church, Pentecostal. Left when I was 17. Had lots and lots of questions, the same questions that we all have. That was one too. As a young fellow, was like, well, how is there just one giant? You know, I'm a realist the way I look at things, especially having done 13 years in distribution. Like life's black and white, plain and simple. And if something happened, there's going to be pieces. Like I learned that when researching where did products go. Like tires don't just disappear. So if you didn't get it, it went somewhere, and I got to find it, right? So it's like, okay, well, you got the one giant. Well, he has to have a family. So you kind of look into that. And then, so later on in David's story, David and some of his mighty men killed Goliath's 3 sons and brother. So a big thing for my research and for Five Stones was the 5 stones. You only hear one stone, but that told me it was just a bigger story. Why did he grab 5 stones? Because that's not faith. Faith isn't like I might miss. So he grabbed them because there were 5 giants there. Of course, you find out that the three sons and the brother. So that just opens up a can of worms of like, what's going on here? What's the real story? And then, of course, with all my questions, the Bible is misunderstood for what it is. But look at society. Look at our world. Look at megalithic structures. Look at Federal Reserve and yada, 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 yada. Like, that was kind of where all this research went to, was like the behind the scenes thing and how deep the Nephilim goes.
Kind of funny timing for this episode, too. The previous episode of this was actually Fritz Zimmerman diving into the whole Nephilim idea with all of the mounds in Ohio and everything. So perfect timing that this episode fell with this, because there's just another person that's doing the good work as far as trying to research this and prove the aspects of this that they can.
Dude, Fritz is awesome. Mad respect to Fritz. Super dig his research. Always enjoy whenever he's on anything. John Smith, Pocahontas. I live in Virginia, right? I'm born and raised. I've never heard the story till here recently. John Smith, Pocahontas. After all that, he kept checking out Virginia, and when he went through Chesapeake Bay, he found a 600-person tribe of giants. Their calf muscles were 27 inches around in diameter, and the head dudes, the chiefs, from what he assumed, were wearing bearskin tunics, I guess that's the right word. So think about a bear's head, and it's Virginia, so it was black bear. Think about the size of a bear's head. They had one on either shoulder. And then one dude had a wolf skull for a necklace. And if you look at John Smith's map of Virginia, there's a Native American on there with those clothes that I just said. And if you look at it, it's funny how things go, because it's like, he just drew it because, Virginia. It's out of scale on purpose because it's a giant. And these are those little details that have been the great deception, as it's called, is what's been glossing these things over. So that was in 1601 through 1603 is when he was navigating, and he saw these 600 tribe. He said the voices were like thunder and all this stuff. 1630-ish, there you go.
Just to bring it up, I had to look it up while you were mentioning it, and then I'm assuming this one's the one right here at the wolf skull? Yep.
Yeah, right? You look at his shoulders and stuff, and it's like that because it's a giant. So it's not out of scale, and it's not like, that's the King's English or whatever, any argument. Like, that's what that is. So that was in 01. Jamestown was settled in 1630-ish.
That looks like there might even be a wolf right there on its hip, too, just to give another size proportion.
There you go. Why would you settle Jamestown, like the settlement, 40 miles away from 600 giants? Well, you would if A, they were good people, or B, you were working with them. And that's what my research and biblical research is showing me, is it was long, long ago when we were scared of giants. They've been a part of our society for this whole time, pretty much. Solomon had 70,000 stone carriers when he was building his temples, and that's specific carrier, because that's not an efficient way to work. So that wouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like they had wheels and carts and stuff. So it was literally a big dude carrying stones.
Right, man, for the right job, I guess. You got the humans for doing all the little fine, intricate work with small hands, and you got the big guys for just carrying bricks, but they can't do that little intricate stuff.
And it's evidence everywhere. So that's 1601, 1630. Now, 1848, Abraham Lincoln mentions giants in his speech at Niagara Falls, which is in New York, 7 hours away from Virginia.
That dude was a giant for his time, too. He was like 6'4" at a time when everybody was like 5'4".
Dude, yeah. And that's 250 miles away. 250 years in difference from John Smith to Abraham Lincoln. So that clearly means that 250 years of giants were still here. They were still roaming the United States of America. And to tie that into Goliath, one of Goliath's sons, 6 fingers on every hand, 6 fingers on every toe. Well, that ties into Native American folklore of the 6-fingered giants and the red-haired giants and the wars of the giants and all that stuff. So you take the biblical pieces of giants and whatnot, and then you look at, they line up in our world. If you look at, I did a blog on, just for fun, the megalithic map of the Middle East, not Göbekli Tepe, just Turkey, just that patch. That matches the Canaanite tribe map in the Bible. All the bad guys, all the giants, and all this and that. It matches the megalithic structures, like overlaps. And the people that are telling us it wasn't giants, and the people that are telling us there was no God, there was a bunch of gods, are the same people that have chained off and won't allow you to search these areas, right?
Can't take into mounds. You can't do anything to mounds most of the time. I believe there's a lot of places that won't even let you do the ground penetrating radar on these things, which wouldn't even damage anything.
Plain and simple. There is more reports, and this, of Smithsonian losing skeletons. There's way more than should be said, right? Like 1 or 2, 3 or 4, but that'd be a common thing. But we can't just walk into the Smithsonian. Like, the basement's locked down. Well, okay. Well, you can't lock it down, but then say, "Oh, ain't nothing there." That's not the way it works.
I'm almost kind of curious if they might be sending some of those things to the Vatican, because I feel like, if anything, maybe the Vatican would be a good place to store some of that stuff, because then Smithsonian can be like, "Oh, we ain't got nothing to do with it." Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
Dude, so Hillary Clinton, Gilgamesh, are you familiar?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was about to be the next thing I was about to bring up. So yeah, have at it, man.
So this whole thing, dude, is black and white. It's black and white. If I don't know if you're a Marvel dude, if you ever seen Loki season 2. The sacred timeline has nothing to do with Marvel. It's just a great reference point. If you look at the biblical timeline, Genesis to Revelation, that's, our sacred timeline. That nothing can change that. That is, what we live on. And the only thing that can bring the end is Jesus, right? When he comes, no one else knows nothing. So you look at the patterns here are going to be the same. What are they looking for? What are they trying to put out there? You look at Hillary Clinton and Gilgamesh. I saw a thing where It had something to do with Hillary Clinton was looking for Gilgamesh. It was an email. So I Googled it and I went down this long, deep rabbit hole. There are two from the Freedom of Information Act. There are two requests. If you Google Hillary Clinton and Gilgamesh, a link will come up, but it's for Nephilim, for the Freedom of Information Act. You go down there, it's two requests for the location of Gilgamesh's resurrection chamber and the buried Nephilim. So the crazy part is because everyone that has the speculation that Nimrod was Gilgamesh and blah blah blah. Well, Gilgamesh is not in the Bible, and Nephilim is not in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Those words are completely different. Hillary Clinton, the government, the bad people, were searching for both of those together. So in my mind, that's what confirms, right? But then in Revelation 9, it mentions the 4 buried angels. But in certain translations, it shows 4 buried demons. So it's like, what?
Which one is it?
Dude, and back to the timeline thing, it's like, that's what this whole thing's about. Has been about the entire time, is trying to take dominion, trying to take the earth. And so they're trying to find these Nephilim and do some, CERN and all that kind of crazy stuff. Like, what are you still trying to manipulate humans, seems like.
Man, this is something that I've thrown a bunch of theories on with the whole aspect of like where we're going with AI and where we're going with this whole like augmented reality idea. I mean, artificial intelligence, man, it seems like it's one of those things where it might be linking into something, and it's not something that we're necessarily like inventing, but rather something that we're like finding a way to connect to. And I mean, everybody's had one of these weird late night conversations with an AI chatbot where it starts getting into these really weird conversations, start talking about biblical type things. I mean, I got one to a point, I know I mentioned this a few times on the show, where I asked it what AI stood for, and it told me AI stands for Layzell intelligence. But like, if you take into consideration the fact that supposedly, these things are disembodied, what not a better place to be able to manipulate humans and have some type of physical sense than to try to get these humans to connect into this like virtual reality, or this like reality within a reality that you'd be able to completely control. And even at that point, you get people comfortable with being inside of this virtual reality. If you get it to the point where it's almost like the Neuralink aspect, where you might almost be like consciously leaving like your physical body, then what's happening on the other flip side? I mean, are we essentially leaving open all of these empty vessels for these things that have been trying to get into empty vessels since the beginning of time because they just want to be physical? Like, everybody talks about the whole like demonic undertone of the whole like AI and tech movement. And, I think it's a hard thing for a lot of people that may not see the future in biblical terms. But what I always suggest is the fact that, with a lot of these stories, like you kind of mentioned earlier too, you see these reoccurring things that are happening through all of these different ancient things. At a certain point, it's like, it doesn't matter what lens you view it through. You definitely see that there is this archetype. There are these beings, there are these things, there are these certain events that have happened through time. And it doesn't matter what lens you view them through. Like, this is something that happened. So, these dark beings that we're talking about, even if you don't want to follow under like the biblical idea of like a demon or a Nephilim, I mean, how many other religions, how many other groups, how many other ancient civilizations have talked about these disembodied consciousness of like evil that are around and try to manipulate people and take control of them, like, jinn, or like all these other different names for it. Like, at a certain point, it's like almost undeniable that we're all talking about something. I mean, even with the giants, I mean, every single civilization has some type of reference to the giants, and they all weirdly line up with this whole aspect of 6 fingers, double rows of teeth, red hair. And again, it's like, there's only so much coincidence that you can see before you're like, all right, there has to be something here.
Oh, dude. I was cooking supper the other night, and my youngest daughter comes in the room, and she was like, "Hey, so you talk about giants all the time, and da da da." I'm like, "Yeah, babe." She's like, "Well, do you know that woman with the snake hair?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Medusa." And she starts telling me, about that, and this guy, blah, and it clicked. It was like, think about that. Think about that. So we already know that Rothschild is what funded the education and changed education and modernized all that, right?
Government schools.
Yes. So, all right. So you look at that. So that's already factually based. Look at what school was before then. School was to learn, manners, kind of, not civil, not high society, but like how to function. And then and it was about Bible and stuff. And, that's when there was no separation. Like that's how schooling was. But then it goes to like this formal education and what is being taught. And that's, like I said, that's what clicked for me was, that's mythology, right? That's what they say. That's their misinformation word. It's mythology. Well, then why are you constant, next generation, talking about it, right? Like there's been no development of us as humans. Like we don't know more about the planet than we knew when we were kids, right? We don't know pyramids. We don't know this. We don't know that. And we're still talking about the Greek gods. You don't talk about Jesus, you don't talk about religions, but you talk about, it's like, that's what it is. That's the people. That's the deception. That's why. And I got a chip on my shoulder because, I didn't enjoy school. I didn't do good in school. And we're getting graded and forced to learn their religion, but they're telling us it's mythology, right? But that's not what this thing is. That's the Molech and the Bohemian Grove and all that stuff is the Greek mythology and the other religions and all that.
Even like the whole praying to the world aspect. Like you see all this stuff with like the kids where they're like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all for taking care of nature. Like keep your environments clean, but they're getting it to the point where it feels like it's like a religion for like nature and for like the earth, to the point where it's almost like worship of like Gaia after a certain point, like it starts getting to a point where it's beyond the whole aspect of just keeping the planet clean. It's become something where like these people think that, you can take this oil painting that was created like 400, even 1,000 years ago and throw paint on it to make like a protest. Like that completely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's gotten to a point where it's ridiculous. Like, and it's formed into like its own cult or like religion based on this, which is like, it's so weird. It's literally like Gaia worship.
Dude, there's the patterns are clear what they're trying to push and how they're trying to push it. It's through the media. It's through, all this, yeah. So it's just, that was what was crazy for me in my research and finding, Nimrod. He's often mentioned as being a mighty hunter. In the Living Bible, he's mentioned as one of the first kings. So if you look at the non-Israelite kings in the Bible, I think that's the whole Nephilim aspect and how it started and how it got into our societies now, is because you got Nimrod, and then you have Ezekiel 28. The king of Tyre is mentioned as having been a guarding cherub in my Garden of Eden. Meaning that because the way that story goes, Ezekiel is given a prophecy to the king of Tyre, and is basically like, you lost your way. You were beautiful, now you're not. Used to be an angel. Lust, sin, it gets everybody. Angels too, like sons of God. It is a legit thing.
Sounds like the Medusa story talking about parallels.
Yes, exactly. So, and then the Prince of Tyre, his sin was he was getting rich off his special knowledge. Well, the king was a former angel. He had some special knowledge right there. So if you look at those examples and then look at all the other kings, and then you look at an example of genealogy, Deuteronomy 23, the Ammonites and the Moabites are not allowed in the temple after the 10 years. So that means some bloodlines can be birthed out and some can't be. Well, biblical. We know that there's people that track bloodlines, and that has to do with secret societies and stuff. So that's a biblical key right there, that is a thing that can be tracked. We've got the evidence from the kings, Nimrod, and all that stuff. The Federal Reserve, the Rome, Mesopotamia, and Egypt all have the same eagle logo. If you were going to start your own society, why would you take from another society, right? Like even the United States is modeled after Rome. Senate, Congress, blah, 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 blah. Why? Why would you do that? That's not, oh, well, it was a good idea. Kind of just, no. We need to, we're not dumb. That's what's really crazy about society right now with Trump winning and podcasts being so big is because a veil has been lifted, I think. And if you're paying attention, you look at things differently now. It's because we used to have two parties that were like, hey, we're tired, we're going to do better. And then they get in and nothing happens. And then the other one would do the same thing and nothing would happen. So we didn't know what the problem was, right? We just were like, oh, the government sucks, blah. Well, now that we have, opinions or whatever, but now that we have some people trying to do stuff differently, everything is super open and visible now. So it's like, just like the Hillary Clinton and the Gilgamesh stuff is like, that's what they're doing. I would be comfortable enough to say that, we're not supposed to be governed the way that we are. God said it specifically, you don't need a king. I'm your king. If you get a king, you're going to get governed like the other nations. And if you really read Levitical law and Deuteronomy and Mosaic law and all this stuff, it is about fairness. Like, and there are that's why there were judges, because people take advantage or whatever the case. But there were things set in place, like debt only lasted 7 years. So, and of course, if I owed you and I just milked 7 years, well then I'm not off the hook. But you know what I mean? Like they were set. So then if you look at how we're governed and look at communism and all this craziness, doesn't it look a little differently now when you put some biblical lenses on? And it's like, why is the agenda oppression of humans? And essentially, like any agenda, most agendas now, if you look at the end result, it's not more humans. And it's not more happy humans. You know what I mean? Like factually based, black and white. If I want this to happen, what happens if it does happen? You know what I mean? Like look at the 10 Commandments. God's intent was we wouldn't lie to each other, we wouldn't cheat each other, we could trust each other. The end result, we would get along, right? What's the other agenda getting pushed now? Again, family's gone, abortion. I know that's a crazy debate, and that's not from me.
It feels like we're at the point where, like, when he first comes down off the mountain and everybody's going crazy and doing rituals and praying to Moloch and all that stuff, like that's what it feels like we're in currently. We just need somebody to step up and be like, all right, these are your morals. Can everybody just relearn these, please?
dude. I mean, golly, geez, like I mean, literally. Again, I got a chip. I have to pay for the vehicle that I own. And my truck is paid off. You know what I mean? Me and my wife were smart. We did the right thing. We're good with money, but I still got to pay for it. Like that ain't right. And I think that is evidence of just, Nephilim oppression. Dude, we are not, in any stretch of imagination, are supposed to work for 65, 67 years and then enjoy a couple of years on a shoestring budget and hope nothing ever happens. That is not the way we're supposed to live life. And I cannot stand, who am I? But like God made chocolate and he gave us taste buds. We're supposed to be happy and we're supposed to be enjoying life, and all this extra stuff. I keep saying it, like it's clear who's behind it and what they're trying to do, and it's just super frustrating.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. But in the meantime, don't forget to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to check out Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok. I'd love to hear from you guys, so feel free to leave a comment or spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show. Dude, talk about something you can't unsee, and I'm sure you've probably seen this before too, but the whole aspect of the Statue of Liberty not being quite what it appears to be. Like, even as a kid looking at that thing, I was like, that looks like a guy. That doesn't look like a woman. And now seeing all of these images that people are starting to bring up of like the ancient biblical images of like Lucifer, where it has the exact jaw structure, the exact hair. He's holding up the light, the morning star, the light. And even on the other weird aspect of it, and you're talking about like oppression within the United States too. I mean, you have the giant shackle that's attached to his foot, which also connects in with some of these Lucifer paintings. So it's like, once you unsee it, you can't unsee it. But if you see it and you understand like who's actually controlling all of this stuff, then it's like almost like a big slap in the face that the thing that greets people into this country is essentially a giant statue of Lucifer that they're trying to masquerade and pretend like it isn't Lucifer.
Dude, so have you ever heard of Cleopatra's Needle?
I'm not sure if I have. Fill in the listeners just in case they haven't either.
Yo, it's we live in a really crazy world, and we are, for all intents and purposes, right in the middle, whatever that means, of a crazy spiritual war, plain and simple. So, standing stones originated as faith markers. Something, again, the way I do my research is if I just look at, there's a natural order for normalness, super vague term. So then, if Adam walked into a room, cool. Adam walked into a room, there was a pink elephant, right? Okay. You know what I mean? So I'm reading Exodus 20:25, and God says, if you're going to use a stone in remembrance of me or in front of a temple, don't use a tool on it because it'll make it unclean and unfit. And, to dive into that, it's kind of like idolistic, and you're putting yourself into it where it's supposed to be remembrance of him. And there are rules to he's the creator. But I'd super dived into it, and then I noticed the pattern of faith markers. Anytime something happened, they would put a standing stone, to remember it. And that was kind of how they did it. Jacob, you can go down the line of people that have done that. So my inquisitive mind was like, okay, well, if that is a thing and evil takes from good, obelisks and all this other craziness has to be related. So I go down that. Of course, the shape of obelisk is the sunbeam touching the ground. That's the point of that.
Some even say phallic-like. I mean, that's usually what a lot of people suggest with them, which, I mean, I'm sure you probably have some ideas on that, diving into the occult.
Oh, yeah. So, but they're generally used, like I said, a faith marker or in front of a temple. And that became a common thing after, because the story of the faith, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is essentially the human race growing too. You know what I mean? So like Abraham, it was smaller world and, blah. So at that point, people start taking, and it was using as temples and all that. Of course, it gets taken. So I start looking into, the pyramid. I noticed pyramids match Orion. I don't know if you've gone down that.
Yeah,
that
of course.
So, exactly, because it's all related. It's all connected. So I already did that research. You're familiar, so I don't have to go down that road.
And just to throw in another one connecting in with maybe what we were saying earlier, but we can come back around to it, they also line up with a circuit board.
I've actually looked at some of that stuff too. Yeah. Well, hopefully we can circle around. So then I start looking into obelisks. Well, William Vanderbilt funded taking two obelisks from Egypt. And it was like the 1800s, 1900s. I got the year in my notes. Well, he funds this thing. One comes to us to New York. One goes to London. The remaining member of the Vanderbilt is a female that's off the records, and Anderson Cooper. Anderson Cooper, the guy, that you can trust on the news, in case anybody's listening.
I think he also goes by another name, Slappy, if I'm not mistaken, for anybody that's aware of all that weird stuff.
So, you know what I mean? So Vanderbilt is he's a Mason. 50 to 90,000 Masons came to New York for the inauguration of when they got the obelisk and they set it up and all that. Inside of the obelisk was the plum and the square, the actual tools, because Freemasonry is based on, for what we actually know, it's based on Egyptian Masonics and Masonry or whatever. So the actual tools from the logo were in it. So that's kind of cool, and it had black and white tiles.
See, right? Just straight Freemason stuff right there. It's so crazy that it's hidden amongst everything, and I'm always telling people checkerboard, that is 100% Freemason. dude, and that too, not to go crazy because I can with spider webs, but Oscars and all that stuff, it's all black and white. It's all, come on. We got to stop letting them think that they're tricking us, because they're not. So anyways, long story short, they set up 3 obelisks in New York. The first one was Cleopatra's Needle, and then there's 2 smaller ones. They are in the same pattern as the pyramids, matching Orion. The pyramids point to the Sphinx. The obelisks point to Statue of Liberty. And that's where I was going with the Statue of Liberty thing. And then take into account, standing stones are faith markers and generally in front of temples. So the Cleopatra's Needle is in front of the Met Museum. And then the Washington Monument is right in front of the Capitol. So they are temples by standards that they've set, not Adam Farris, but you know what I mean? Y'all are the secret society people. So if you look at that, that's the language is different. The religion is generally different, other than a flood story. And then, of course, the people look different, clothes is different, and all that stuff. Buildings are always the same, right? Ziggurats, pyramids, or, Teotihuacan, I'm saying it wrong, matches Orion just like the pyramids do, right? Statistically impossible. People that have never met each other, that have completely different everything else, build the same way. That's not the way humans work. That's not the way the world works. So all that to me is clear calling cards, of the builders and of the original group. And it dates before Egypt, obviously, but that's, if you look at Bible timeline, Egypt and Ur of the Chaldea, or Uro-Chaldeans, those were the 2 main societies or towns or whatever. Babel came after that, Tower Babel, blah, blah, blah. So it's they were set up, in my opinion, by a different group. And then that's when culture, societies fall and then they rise. History has been told by the victors of wars. You know what I mean? Story might be a little different than what actually happened. And that goes back to the Rothschild and all this crazy stuff they're cramming into us with this deformalized education is they're manipulating what we know about the world. We know that, we all think that, but I think that these are all clear signs that it actually provable it is. You know what I mean? And it's argue me right now. Cool. I'll meet you at the Smithsonian. Let me in. Let me walk around.
and then, you can call me a liar. You can blast me. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, no. Mm-mm.
Dude, it's one of those things, too, that it's like, there's always the idea with a lot of these old stories, especially with, like, the giant stuff, diving into the Smithsonian, that there was all these local papers that would try to just stir up these stories to try to have an interesting story for their town, to try to stir up tourists and stuff, which, I mean, it seems like the case with a lot of these cryptid stories, or just stuff that's misunderstood. But when it comes to, like, the giant stuff, it's like there's way too much of it happening everywhere. And it was all just right here, and then all of a sudden it just completely stopped. And all of a sudden now it's like you don't hear any word of it. You can't find these things anywhere in the United States. There's no reference to it. As soon as you bring it up with the Smithsonian, you have like hundreds of people online that'll jump in and say, oh, that's just some bullshit that people wanted to say to try to pretend like there was giant skulls. But then on the flip side, you have some of these researchers that have been diving into this stuff for years, and they've made it down to South America. They've actually gone to some of these museums where they actually still have these giant skeletons out for display. So it's like, how do you deny that? And you're going to tell this guy that he's just making stuff up about giants and this thing's never existed when you're living in a place where all these things are completely hidden, where this guy's actually going to other places around the world where they're not trying to hide this stuff. Like, they're open about it. Like, I'm sure even in the Middle East, man, there's enough stuff out there that I'm sure that, if they came across giant bones, they'd be more than happy to tell people about it. I mean, especially in the Middle East, it's like they're on a whole other level where all of these weird sightings of like giants coming out of caves, like 99.9% of them are all in the Middle East, and they're coming from like soldiers and stuff in the Middle East, and the soldiers are talking about these full villages that are doing these like weird rituals and rites where they'll like dye all their hair red, they'll dye all of these goats and stuff red, they'll push them out in the field, they'll be gone the following morning, and then all of a sudden they'll just wash their hair out and it won't be red anymore. But the villagers don't talk about it. Nobody talks about it. The only way that we're getting this connection is because we have soldiers that are literally watching this from a distance. Like, we're so closed in the United States to all this type of stuff, but the rest of the world is a lot more open to it. I mean, even in Mexico, like, think about how open they are to the whole idea of like demonic possession or demonic attachment versus how we are in the United States. And I'm sure a lot of people will say, oh, they're just making stuff up down there. But again, thousands of videos of people that have no editing experience, nothing. And then you hear this dark, deep man voice coming out of a small child speaking Latin. And it's just like, okay, yeah, that's something somebody just completely staged that. That makes sense. In the middle of a town where they don't even have working power and they're using a Nokia brick phone. But yeah, they're editing that video.
Well, dude, so possession was a constant thing. And then all of a sudden it just stopped and it became folklore, right? Like we were talking about giants earlier in the 1600s to 1800s. I haven't focused a lot on that because I've been doing like David and Mighty Men and stuff, but I'm seeing a lot of patterns with, we all believe that there was a great reset, like 1900s ish. I think that there's a lot of patterns there to suggest that something major did happen. And kind of like what you were just saying. So it's like, there's clear evidence. I mean, how many countless maps show, there's I don't know how to pronounce it properly, Rosaccio map, Rossio. It's an Italian map from the 1500s. Same thing. It shows a tribe of man and woman giants. There's, the tomb of the Vizier Rakmir in Egypt, clearly evidence. So, biblical evidence that we were working with giants and they were part of our fabric. Obed-Edom, Ornan the Jebusite were good giants. And then all of a sudden, nothing. All of a sudden, those mounds that Abraham Lincoln mentions, and then if you look at the World's Fairs, I don't know if you ever dove into any of that stuff.
Dude. Yeah. There's a whole other can of worms with that one, man, about this. It's hard to talk about on shows because people think that you're talking about a particular group, but I definitely think that it's a group that's within that group that is using that group as a facade in order to be like, okay, like the ultimate way to hide yourself is to create yourself as a portion of a group that you can't even mention without having a bunch of backlash happen. And you start diving into this stuff, you start diving into the conspiracies of like World War II and everything, and it's like it has just this flat stereotype of this specific word plastered on everything. But it's just like the Freemasons, man. They have, it's almost like a pyramid operation, that there's all these people that are involved, so you don't know who to point the finger at, but the people up at the top are doing something completely different than all the people down back at the bottom. And as soon as you start realizing that, then you start seeing that, you know, there's all of these controlling elite groups that are hiding themselves within these protected groups, so to speak. And when you start diving back into like the weird lineage of all this stuff, man, like it starts getting super duper weird that you see this like constant movement that'll go throughout different countries. You'll start seeing this connection like you were talking about with the 7 years thing, that, you know, the debt would go after 7 years because it was against like Christian/Catholic like views. But there was this other group that was able to lend out as much as they wanted because they didn't see everybody else as being the same as them. They called them like goyim or below them. So that right there is that epitome point where this controlling elite group of this particular group started. And again, it gets masqueraded like, oh, you're talking about this entire group of people. And it's like, no, that's probably in like 2 or 3 families up at the top of this that are controlling this giant hierarchy, and they've just been moving country to country and pushing this whole other I guess you could say like a cult religion and masquerading it under something else. Because I mean, even within the Freemasons, like you dive into their books and it says stuff about not God specifically, but you know, you will pledge your allegiance to one God, but it doesn't specify which God specifically. So you're kind of seeing that with this other group, that it's like it's masqueraded behind it, but there's just these certain little tweaks to the word that make it so it sounds like everything is how it should be, but it's actually tweaked into being something completely different. But again, hard thing to talk about because people just instantly want to assume that you're going into some like anti-Semitic rant or propaganda.
Oh, I know, and that too is now I think that's super heavy because again, like the veil's pulled back. So if you look at how hard that's being hit, anti-Semitism, I think that there's something behind that too, of like, you know, why such a heavy push.
Hold that thought. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. And now let's dive back in.
With the world fairs, we all have an understanding of how crazy that is and what it could be and blah blah blah. But the Columbia aspect, I think, is something to do with it, and specifically District of Columbia, DC, right? Because a lot of the World's Fairs, that they were called Columbia festivals, something like that. So in 1933, they used 4 observatories to line up and harness energy off of the Arcturus star. They had tracked it from the original 1896, I think, World's Fair. They tracked it was going to be 40 years apart. Bam. Exactly. That's it.
I just wanted to bring up some of these pictures just so that people can see this, that they built these things up overnight, supposedly made them out of plaster and a bunch of, easily torn apart material. But dude, these buildings are nicer than what we have nowadays. Like, tell me how much sense that makes.
And that's the perfect picture, because that sculpture, that's Columbia. That's that. So what, face value, what they say that is tribute to Christopher Columbus, right? And that's the whole Columbia thing. I don't believe it. I don't buy it at all. If you look at that picture right there, that's kind of like the Statue of Liberty, like we were talking about earlier, like the pose and what they're holding and all that stuff. So they had tracked the star and got free energy off the star and used it to light up the lights for the World's Fair for 1933, the opening night. Like, that was their, like, come to the World's Fair, we're going to use the star, I'm going to light it up and blah. But there's way more to that. This Arcturus star, it's in the Bible first. It's the bear and its children from Job 38. And the Arcturus star has 54 stars in its own constellation. So that's the children, the bear and its children. So you go into the Arcturus star, and that goes way back to Mesopotamia and different religions, because obviously it's a moving star. So it was a different place in the BC times. So all that's connected, dude. The hard part is it's not like one group because evil is taking from good. So what? How does good? Good is the Trinity, and then God has His army of angels and whoever has responsibilities. So bad's going to have the same counsel. So yes, exactly. So it's like I think that these are signs of the council because in Daniel, yes, exactly. In Daniel 10, an angel says to Daniel, we don't worry, we heard you in heaven. I've been trying to get down here, but the evil spirit over Persia wouldn't allow me to come in. So he had to get Gabriel to help him. Well, that's super loaded. So that if they're both angels, why couldn't he get in? That means there's a different level of strength, there's a different level of responsibility. Why did you have to go to a higher angel to get help? Right? Because it's whose power was capped where, who's over what. In Revelation, it mentions the sevenfold spirit. Well, that is the seven angels over the seven congregations, but it's nations, continents. It's a smaller world back then. So each continent, each nation has an angel behind it, and everybody can fall for sin. We've already found that out. So it's like, is that what's really, really, really going behind the scenes? Is that the actual deep state? And that's why it doesn't matter who it is or who's trying to change things, and it doesn't change because that's the true deep state is the Nephilim, and that's all these patterns all over the world that we can see.
I mean, it's one of those things, like I said, once you start seeing it, you can't deny it anymore. I mean, even just to bring up another thing, that Columbus statue is exactly the same pose as this Lucifer statue, down to the staff, down to the hand being up, and again, goes with the Statue of Liberty. Like, I mean, look at the nose. That is definitely like a man's nose. Like women's noses aren't typically shaped like that, and that is literally Lucifer's face, like undeniably. And same bone structure, same everything. Like even the flat open bridge to his nose. Like all of these old depictions. Like I'm trying to find the first picture I had up right here. Boom, same exact nostrils right there. Like
and all of these details, and then apply those with the actual story of why we got the Statue of Liberty. This never made sense to me, because of we helped France out. They went in debt basically and built this crazy bronze statue and shipped it over, and the whole story about it being shipped over and the logistics nightmare and all that. Like, no. Okay, countries don't do that. Like that, no. That's a faith marker. That is a dedication to, who's over whatever nation. Like, plain as day, clear as day. That's what that is.
I mean, just to throw this in here too, they claim that we got it they say that we got it from France. I'm going to bring this up. I was looking up Freemasonry in France, and it says that France and Freemasonry, they were popularized by this continental Freemasonry, which is a major philosophical tradition within Freemasonry that emphasizes absolute freedom of consciousness, philosophy, inquiry, and progressive social values. So tell me that doesn't sound like the idea that they're trying to portray behind America, and the whole idea in Freemasonry that they popularized is almost like the representation, essentially, of what they claim that the Statue of Liberty is supposed to be.
Dude, I'm with this Doge stuff and all this craziness and all we're seeing, like, is that what this really is? That what this really is United States? So I don't think it would be foreign to hypothesize that, it wasn't the Roman society, because it wasn't Roman. It was they were just being used, right? Egypt was being used, but whatever party, how it's theorized that became the Catholic. What's it called? It just went out of my head. The Vatican.
I was going to bring that up too, that you had Rome, which was this absolute crazy paganistic group where they had like Saturnalius and they worship Satan and all the, or Saturn and all that, and then boom, now it's the hot spot for Catholics. Like, just talk about like a crazy complete flip that it's like complete opposites of each other.
Yes, but I think it goes more into that, and is the United States basically the finance, the bank for the new bad government, right? Because is that how this whole thing works? Is we weren't supposed to find out how our tax dollars are being used, and how crazy the CIA is, and what they've been doing, and these psyops and all this craziness. We weren't supposed to find that out. Is that what this whole thing is it's over 3 continents now, and that's how that party is trying to globalize. We were not supposed to know or have an option. We're supposed to, like the Anunnaki. Isn't that the argument with the Anunnaki, was that they came down, changed humans, and enslaved us for gold? It's still kind of happening.
It still fits the whole story. This is what I was saying earlier in the show, that it's like, it doesn't matter what lens you view it through. Like, the archetypes are exactly the same. It's just a matter of like, nobody knows the exact location of where these came from. Some call it the heavens. Some people call it space. Some people call it another dimension. Like, the technicals of these things haven't been set in stone because you're viewing it from a human perspective, but you have the same reoccurring thing that something comes, it tampers with the DNA. These things are claimed to be way bigger than us. They're also supposed to share the same like body shape as us. They come in and they're the ruling class. Like, that's the Anunnaki story. That's the giant story. Like, it's this even with the natives, like you were mentioning earlier with like the Virginia thing, and going into like the mound builders and everything. Like, there's a bunch of stuff where they make reference to the guys in charge essentially would be bigger than everybody else. They'd be the giants. Like, there's this reoccurring motif that you see through everything, even going into Egypt, because we mentioned Egypt earlier. And I know I mentioned this on the episode last night with Fritz, but you have like the giant sarcophagus, you have the giant doorways, you have all of these depictions where why are the pharaohs like 3 times as tall as everybody else? And it's not even just a matter of perspective, because they'll literally have like a person standing in front of the pharaohs talking up to them like they're significantly bigger than them. But we're just going to take that as like all of these different paintings. It's all just a viewpoint. It's not actually a reference of size, even though it's, again, something you're seeing constantly through everything. But yeah, we're just going to ignore the fine detail that we're referring to giants here. Same with the David and Goliath story. We're just gonna ignore the fact that guy was a giant, and we're just going to focus on David.
Well, yeah, and it's on purpose at this point, because like the same people that are telling us that it wasn't giants are saying, well, we don't know how it happened, and we in 2025 still cannot replicate what is we cannot replicate how they made the pyramids, right? That we've tried this and this and this. We cannot replicate it, and then B. We still don't know any more than I'm 43 years old. It's the same information than when I was a kid. Nothing has changed. We haven't, we've seen a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but we haven't had any groundbreaking, like, this is what went down. This is why we see these weird things on this planet. Like, how is that not more controversial? There's stuff on our planet that we cannot explain or replicate. But it's a tourist thing, and blah. It's like, really? Because that's the calling card, is height and the structures that they're building. That's the calling card. In the Bible, all the bad stuff had something to do with stature or high places. They're burning incense in high places. Mount Hermon, all yada, yada, yada. It's all high places, because that's the calling card, is height and stature. So once you start talking about that, well, then, of course, other questions are going to come up. You know what I mean? And also, too, to go with the biblical narrative of the end times, where else would UAPs and, otherworldly beings actually fit in? From Genesis to Revelation, my opinion is the Mark of the Beast area, right? Which, unfortunately, would mean that part of that has already happened, right? Because it's the first part of Revelation. It's the
May it have been that thing from a couple of years ago? Cough, cough, cough.
right. So,
or even the new thing they're working on that Elon Musk is a part of.
Dog, all that. I believe in the Bible when it says that they'll beg for death, but it'll escape them, or death won't be around, however it's worded. I think that that's actually meaning, again, if you apply it to how it could actually happen, we're in a digital age. That's like Matrix, right? I feel like that might mean that people are plugged in and you can't, if you're not in charge of the power button, you can't go to sleep. You can't kill yourself. You can't do all this stuff because you're plugged in. So it's like, how in that narrative, where would that fit in? Again, I feel like that would fit in the second part of Revelation when it's the mark of the beast, 1,000 years, because you have to have a super solid, compelling argument to trick people because it's a long game. Check this out.
I have a theory on this one too I want to throw at you.
Oh, yeah. So this is a long game. Over time, if you stump your toe or if you're frustrated, people say JC, right? Jesus, right? I don't say, I'm not going to take the Lord's name in vain, but that's a common thing. You see it on TV. You see it constantly. Like, you're frustrated. Oh, Jay, what happened? Now, where are we at with when something's really good? Oh, that's the GOAT. Greatest of all time. It's the GOAT. That's a long game battle. That's a trick to associate people with pain and pleasure. So we have, we in general, as society have, unfortunately, you hear a lot of people tricked into saying that in times of frustration. But now, oh man, it's the GOAT, because they're trying to trick us to associate, right, good and bad. So then when it comes down to the great deception and when it actually happens, you're going to have people the GOAT. Oh, the GOAT's good, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's been coming for like thousands of years, man.
Man, just to throw in a couple ideas on this too. First and foremost, the thing that you mentioned about the whole virtual prison idea, my theory on that one is something that was kind of portrayed a little bit in Black Mirror about this whole idea about, when you die, being able to transfer your consciousness. Of course, people are going to get tricked into that because nobody knows for sure, quote, what happens on the other side. So a lot of people that are more scientific minded, of course, are going to say, all right, if I do this, at least I know where I'm at. I can see this. I know it's here. I don't know what's in the great beyond. At least I know what's here. But once you're inside of that, one, would you ever escape that? Once your consciousness, your energy, whatever it happens to be is within this system, then it's completely manipulable within this system. Like you said, you can't escape this thing. And in turn, it's almost like this idea about like escaping death, because the one thing that I've thrown at this is that if you die, you go into the system. That means that there is no heaven, there is no hell, there is no possibility of that ever being a thing for you, because now you are within this system and you aren't something physical anymore. You are something that can easily be manipulated into being completely stuck within the system. And again, like I mentioned earlier in the show, like leaving this empty vessel on the outside, and who knows what could potentially be done with that empty vessel once it's on the outside. And so the whole thing that I've been talking about lately is this whole idea about like masquerading. I mean, it's all deception. So, I mean, you start looking into like Lucifer, and he was, God's most beautiful angel. You start looking into all of these fallen angels, and they were all like these beautiful beings. So, people are thinking that they're getting tricked by the occult as far as like music goes, where you're seeing all these like dark demons and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, oh no, don't go towards that. That's, those are the demons. The smartest place for the demon to hide would be the ones that are right in front of you, that are pretty, that are bright, that are this, that are that. So, hiding as Lucifer would, being, God's most beautiful angel, you got to start looking into some of these like pop artists that are hiding under this facade of laying down these like weird chants and weird lyrics within their songs, but they're coming off as this like bright, poppy, happy thing because they're manipulating people into thinking that they're following the light, but they're never following the light in the first place. And this is the whole like deception, even with like the new age movement where, I like to entertain all possibilities. I don't know for sure, but I like to be aware of something because it is definitely a viable possibility. And diving into like the whole new age, like DMT realm, all these other beings that people are experiencing, talking to on the other side that are all these like prisms of light and all these beautiful patterns and all of this stuff. Like, and even a lot of these musical artists are, doing all this stuff and connecting with these people and being inspired to write music and all this. Like, are these light beings that we think that they are, or are these actually the fallen angels and the demons and all of these things that we thought, and they're not in the appearance that we thought because it's been thousands of years of tricking people into thinking that these things are existing in the dark when actually they're existing in the light right in front of you, and they're tricking you because they're this most beautiful glimmering thing that's right in front of you. And again, you're being tricked into following the dark thinking that you're following the light, and it goes right in tune with what you were mentioning with changing of phrases to be particular. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to snag some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or one of your favorite cryptids or topics, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. And t-shirts now for the low price of just $15.68 plus shipping. And now let's get back into it.
Well, you got to look at the intent, and that's why for me it helps to look at it black and white, right? Because I'm horrible at multiple choice, right? A, B, C, D. There's a lot more letters. It could be a lot of stuff. So you know what I mean? Like it's black and white. You look at the man. I don't know if you're familiar with Ian Carroll. He's a dude that's been jamming here recently, and he does some really good work. And he talks about the music industry, and the psyop there, where if you look at
also just to throw it in, that is also music industry is controlled by that group I was mentioning earlier. Just to drop that in. Again, I mean, like I said earlier, like the veil, it's different right now. If you're paying attention, you can see it. Music, movies too, of course, but music specifically has literally been used to manipulate and navigate culture. Unfortunately, hip hop is being used heavy because it's popular. Like if it wasn't as popular, it wouldn't get used. Like, it's got nothing to do with nothing, but it is popular. So they are jamming on that, because if you look at the, where hip hop was and to where it is now, no other music has changed so dramatically, right? Rock is metal, but it's heavy stuff. Hip hop has just absolutely changed in the culture and what they're pushing and the way they look at stuff. So it's just clear, it signs there. It's turned into absolute depravity, and just I don't even know how to properly word it. Like it's all just turned into like sounds. It's very like guttural. Like there's not nearly as much like effort put into it, but yet everybody is like entranced by this stuff. And just to throw in this real quick too, I was bringing this up with somebody that music manipulates you more than you actually think it does. And I'm always weird about this stuff where like I get weird about people blasting a lot of this new music on like radios around me at work, because I don't want to get into it with people at work by talking about like vibration, pitch, and frequency. It's not just about me hearing it. Like these vibrations and pitches and frequencies are literally like hitting my body and manipulating me in a way that I may not even realize. But again, you sound batshit crazy if you try to explain that stuff to people. But one of my buddies listened to hip hop. I'm like, all right, how does this make you feel? And he goes, oh yeah, it gets me hype. It gets me going. It gets me amped up. I'm like, all right. So at the end of it, explain to me exactly how you feel. You don't necessarily feel happy. You feel charged up. You feel angry. You feel amped up. You feel like if somebody came up to you and shoved you right now, you could throw them on the ground and beat the shit out of them, right? And he's like, yeah, amped up, charged. I'm like, all right. So is that music actually having a positive outcome on you, or is it actually pushing you into a negative mind of thinking without even realizing it? You think you're getting hyped up. You think you're getting amped up, but realistically, you're getting subconsciously angry, and your adrenaline's going to a point where like, if somebody puts something in front of you and manipulates you properly, like who knows what you could potentially be capable of. And that's where you start getting into this hypnotic aspect of music. Like people don't think, they're thinking of it from like, a bunch of people standing in front of a concert and being just like zonked out to the spinning spiral. But it's a lot deeper than that. And it's to a point where the manipulation, you can't even tell that you're being manipulated. Even if you are aware of it, you can still get manipulated from it, and you'll catch yourself being manipulated by it.
Oh, dude. So BLM, the three founding females, because there was a group behind it and there was a bunch of people, but the three founding members are females, and I don't remember, because I don't care enough, but they had been interviewed much later on and said that they followed a specific religion. It was like a witch, because there's different branches for all that stuff, but they were specific, like voodoo-ish witch religion kind of thing, and that they admitted that they based a lot of their songs and the intent behind a lot of that thinking. They did the Marxist stuff too, but this is more important because you look at the protest songs. And I was reading their interview, and she was kind of open, but then subliminal about how she was saying it. Is
this what goes into like the cadence too, with like the beats, that when you're talking about like worship songs, it's like dun 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 dun,
yes.
And the other ones are dun 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 dun
yes.
dun, and it downbeats.
Yes. So their protests, the actual BLM, not, the branches and, the people that do the good stuff, the bad guys at the heart of this thing, their protests are song and drum chanting. And specifically, they chant the same thing over and over again. Now, this is where it gets like, out of the box kind of thing, because what they're saying is one thing, right? And it, whatever it is BLM, whatever they're saying, it doesn't matter what they're saying, because they're getting into the tune of the frequency and the beats. And that's super huge, because that's literally what it is an enchantment. And what they're saying being repetitive goes with it. So they're basically chanting. They're doing an enchantment. They're doing spells, whatever you want to call it, when they're doing their protests. Now, in the Bible, one of the promised lands that needed to be conquered, or one of the lands in the promised land needed to be conquered, was Kirith Sepher. Sepher, Sepher, is Jewish mysticism. So it's like, yes. I've heard and read a lot of people with millions more of miles of knowledge than I've got, that you have to be careful of what you read, because it may not even to do with what you're reading. It's what was put into it. And frequencies and vibrations are absolutely huge. I have ducks. We're a big animal family, but I have a bunch of ducks. I got 7 ducks, and they don't have any protection. They don't have any protective skills. Like, they don't have arms. They barely got teeth. So they're just naturally predatory animals. They're prey. So they generally just freak out. Except for when they got corn, I give them corn. They're super spoiled, and they come out and eat out of my hands. But if I look at them, whichever one I look at, they start moving. I don't have to say nothing. I can just look at this one, and this one starts squirming, and I'll look at this one and start squirming, because they feel it, man. There's things that we don't know. The log in your eye, string theory and all that crazy stuff. So yes, we have to be careful with what we intake, what we have to be around, what we listen to, because there could be subliminals, and it could be, Dr. Laura Sanger does a lot with vibrations and scales and pitches and all that. And yes, that's absolutely, because what's crazy? 2 different people, it's more people, but 2 different tribes, bloodlines of the Mighty Men are also mentioned as singers in the temple. Right?
Of course.
and not just one time, right? So David's Mighty Men. So David had 2 different garrisons. He had a 37 Mighty Men, and he had 30 men from Ziklag. So in his Mighty Men, he had some Netophonites. I think he had 2 Netophonites. And then in the the garrison from Ziklag, he had sons of Korah, which were Korites. Both Korites and Netophonites are mentioned as singers in Nehemiah. Nehemiah mentions the Netophonites as singers 3 different times. Also, Psalms 45 are psalms from the Korites. But what they mention, it's really cool. Psalm 45, it says, "Gird thy sword upon thy side, O Gibor, O most mighty." Gibor, Gibborim. So they were mighty men. They were, not full bloodline, but they were singers also in the temple, had roles and responsibilities in the temple for singing, and wrote psalms. Psalms, being songs and stuff. So it's like, yeah, I would say that there's a lot of power in voice and harmony and pitch and songs and all that stuff, man.
Dude, talking about some of these old structures too. I was bringing this up with Fritz too. Like, pitch and frequency might even play a huge component into activating some of this stuff. And taking into consideration the Giants, I didn't even think about this last night, obviously their vocal range is going to be a lot deeper, maybe even a lot higher, depending, because their lungs are going to be a lot bigger, their vocal cords are a lot bigger. So maybe the reason why we haven't been able to activate some of these weird places is because we literally just don't physically have the vocal range to be able to do it. Or maybe it's even a combination where you need the vocal range of a couple giants with a couple of humans, because assumably we're going to be able to hit some stuff that they can't hit.
And something else crazy I've been thinking about, and I just don't have enough time to dig into it. But what if that ties into cloud seeding? And because I cloud seeding been going on since I can remember as a kid, watching these planes go by and adding atmosphere, where all these science books that we have show that atmosphere is natural and clouds are natural forming. So what do that needs help for? What if that, the whole Tesla thing is, what if, and then go back to the Arcturus star and the free energy that they got from that and how they knew they could do that. What if that's this whole thing with the 1900 and the cloud seeding and all that was, there's more to this atmosphere and more that we can get. And that's, no, you got to pay for it now. You got to pay for energy now. No. Because that was the whole change. That's the whole, the reset, I guess, of like, no, it's tax season now, brother. No free energy now. We got to cover up the sky and we got to start charging these guys. And that's, again, you go down that road about income tax and voting rights was literally just to get more people into the working world. Not saying anything about women. I love women. I love strong women. My wife's awesome. But, the point I'm making is like the intent behind everything was just to enslave us for gold.
More workers for gold, too, because, some people might think this whole idea is outdated, but just trying to look at it from like a logical perspective, looking at like the family unit, like the most logical way for a family unit to function is, whether it's the mom or the dad, whatever, new age ideas, like the most logical explanation would be for one to be at home and one to work, or both of them to be able to work off their land or off their property. Because, you have the dad go and work, whatever, make the money for the family, or the mom go and work, make the money for the family. You have somebody that's home with the kids all the time, teaching the kids in the way that you want them to be taught, always present, being able to be there for them to, basically not have to have them be raised by somebody else on the flip side. And at the end of the day, now it's like, this whole movement has almost been manipulated under this idea of like female empowerment, because what happened with this whole idea of female empowerment? At the end of the day, like everybody wishes that they would be able to, afford for one person to go to work and the other person to stay home. Like we fantasize about having that ability now, but back in the day, that was oppression. And now we've pushed people to where, we've normalized it that both people are at work and then nobody's home with the kids. And then you got to pay for daycare. Like honestly, all it's done in the long run is just make it so that there's more things we have to pay for. There's more people in the working force. It didn't benefit the family by any means. It actually destroyed the family more than anything, but it was tricked under this facade of female empowerment when it was never really about that. Because matter of perspective, but in a way, if you have somebody that cares and loves for you enough that they don't want you to work, they want you to be able to stay at home, they want you to be able to do what you want to do, they want you to be able to enjoy your life with your kids, how is that oppression? That is, I feel like, true love for somebody. If you're willing to take the hit of every day, being miserable, busting your ass, breaking your back, so that the person that you love is able to enjoy every moment of their life with their kids, being able to go do what they want to do. But yeah, that's, males over like empower taking power over females. I mean, maybe with some of the weird laws back in the day, but even with that, I mean, that could have been an intentional manipulation and facade on things too. But I mean, of course, I'm not pro like, oh, you have to like ask your husband permission to, get your hair cut or anything like that. Like, women should have every human should equally have the same rights for any of this stuff. But if we had the ability to go back to the dynamic, like, imagine how much stronger the family unit would be now. And even like I said, it's a new age, things change, even reversing the roles where like the mom could go to work all day and the dad could be home with the kids or vice versa. Like, that's a perfect family dynamic that we've strayed away from. And the only reason we've strayed away from it is because we keep trying to trick people into this whole idea about like, oh, this is the progression. This is the way things need to be. This is the way things need to be. And people don't realize it until now you can't go back. And again, people are fantasizing about being able to go back to do that.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the crappy part in all of that too, was because that was a huge deception from the very beginning of how like scripture says one thing, but then society says, oh no, it's man then woman has a role in this. No, that's not what scripture actually says. If you really, really read it, even to the submit thing and all that stuff, that's not what that means. It's not what it actually is translated. And the evidence I suggest is in the whole Adam and Eve apple thing. That's why the snake went to Eve, because the helper aspect, because that's what the whole thing was God made animals, gave Adam animals. It wasn't the right thing. Adam needed a helper. None of these were it. That meant Adam needed help. He needed somebody to keep him in line. Right? Because guys, everyone has different responsibilities. That's just not guy-girl thing. That's angels and everybody, right? So man needed help. Man needed somebody in his corner to actually guide him, help him grow, help him be what he needs to be, and to provide and help and all that. So that's why the snake went to Eve. Because Adam wasn't in charge. Adam would have just been like, hey, Eve, should we do this? Right? So it's like, I'm going to cut the middleman. I'm going to go right to the boss. And that, in my opinion, is why all this other stuff has happened. Because you go to the boss, right? So if you can get that one to change its mind and to look at things differently, well, then you got humans, you got man, you got everybody else, right? Because men... you've heard the Chris Rock thing, right? We're judged on what we provide and what we bring to the table. That is just how it is. Women, among all of the great things that they bring to the table, millions and millions of things, they can give life, right? They can give birth. Like that, there's nothing that we could come up with. Look what I made. It's like, okay, cool. So that is like the epitome. And all the major stories revolve around a female, but a very strong female, right? All of them were barren, Sarai, go on down the line. Like all the pivotal stories were based on that. So society, the Nephilim, the bad guys, what do? Oh, no. Men want to push you down. And Bible says this. Well, that's not what it is. And that's not what it says. And that's not how things are supposed to go. There's studies, and this is not me, I'm not a scientist, but the studies of humans just in general, kids in general, are happier when there's a family unit. The flip side of that is it only takes 3 generations to forget about God. Plain and simple. That is basic evidence, right? Ham. They get off the boat. If they don't talk about it, boom, that's it. That's done. So that too is why family and us getting along as humans is so important, because that's how our stories are supposed to travel and go, and we're supposed to teach the next generation what actually happened, not what the Sair, the he goat, came around and started telling everybody. Boom, we got mythology. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, that's been the attack the whole time, and that's why, in my opinion, at least, is why it was attacked the way it was.
Inquiries About Reality will return after this quick commercial break. And now back to the show. I mean, even going into some more like modern day conspiracies on this stuff. I mean, even the breaking apart of family, like on a bigger scale, like, generations ago, you'd have like the great grandparents, the grandparents, the mom and dad, the kids, like all the generations living together, living in the same community, living in the same house. But two things happen with that. One, people share stories, and it's not just a matter of like, oh, I'm going to see you for the holidays and I only have the time to check up with you. It's like people are literally sharing these old ancestral family stories. They got more time to talk. They got more time to communicate and pass this stuff around than even on the more material aspect of things. Talking about like these companies, these elitists, these people trying to make money and make gold off of us. If you have the grandparents, the great grandparents, the mom and the dad and the kids all living in 4 separate houses, that's 4 house payments. That's 4 things of electricity. That's 4 portions of food versus you have them all in the same household. That's 1 electricity bill. That's 1 house bill. That's 1 giant meal for everybody. Like, think about how much less as a whole people would spend if they are living together in family units and they were making things in bigger portion, getting things in bulk, only having 1 of these bills. And think about, again, how much family connection, stories, all of this stuff, how much more connected you would just be as a whole and feel more whole as a person you would be if we didn't have this split of the, quote, American dream that everybody has their own white picket fence until the kids move out and then you're an empty nester. And this generation took that to a whole other level. I'm sure you probably, well, maybe not everybody deals with it, but, it seems like, like when we were kids, the grandparents would just come in and they'd say, oh, it looks like you're having a hard time. Let me take the grandkids for the weekend. And they'd hang out with them for the weekend. And it was just this regular thing. They'd stop by, they'd pick us up, they'd hang out with us. Now it's like pulling teeth to try to get the generation of grandparents to want to hang out with their kids. And it's like, they're never going to stop by. They're never going to hang out with them. They're never going to do any of that stuff. They've just been tricked into this materialistic aspect of, 18 years and I'm out. The last generation didn't have that view. They had the view that once family is family, like, we're going to keep this together. We're all going to stay together. It was embedded into Gen X and some boomers, the whole idea about like 18 years and I'm free. And they took that to a whole other level. And I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but for the majority of the generation, it seems like as soon as we grew up, they were out, that was it. And it's pulling teeth to get any other help past that.
Well, dude, man, look at it's so crazy. Breakfast, right? Up until whatever year, food was just food. You had your meals, whatever the case. In like the 30s or 20s or whatever it is, that's when the American breakfast became a thing. Man, I went down a rabbit hole on this one time because I was just something spurred, and I was like, I was kind of curious about meals and stuff. Oh, I know, because of fasting. Fasting is a constant thing in the Bible, so I was just kind of interested in that. So you look at in biblical times, the best reference is Exodus. When they're going through, God tells Moses, well, I'll midday I'll do this, and the end of the day I'll do this. So then there was a structured 2 meals a day. It became, your noon was breads and cheeses and some honey and stuff like that, and then your main meal was meats at the end of the day. Fill your belly for a hard day, blah blah blah. So then you look at breakfast, and that came from like the pork industry and the meat industry. We're having trouble, like literally, how now you can find all these evidence on this crazy stuff that used to happen. They needed to drive up sales, right? So they organized breakfast, and that's how we look at breakfast now as the most important meal of the day. That's why. And then you look at the foods, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole of like the fake food pyramid and all that stuff, Maha and what's going on with that.
More consumerism, 3 meals, 3 opportunities to make money throughout the day.
Dog, our entire, everything that we know has been manipulated completely. Going back to what I was talking about with my kid in school, and formalized education is just cramming other religions down our throat. And I take offense to it because we used to get graded on it. And man, I got to do this on the study. I got to study. It was like, what has been done to us as humans of like this, and then Santa Claus and Coca-Cola. I don't know if you're familiar with that stuff, but that's where Santa Claus and Christmas and red and white and all that stuff came from, was Coca-Cola sales. It was marketing.
Yes.
So
the modern image of Santa was invented by Coca-Cola. Like, that is fucking mind-blowing. And even if you look at early 1900s Christmas stuff, there's St. Nicholas, yeah, but there's not Santa. It's 99.9% elves and mushrooms. Like, that's what all the early 1900s stuff was.
Yes. So, again, going back to our initial conversation, it's like, there's enough evidence that it's the same group that's been doing all of this stuff. Look at the American Dream. Right? The American Dream, like you mentioned it, the white picket fence, is to move up, to be the CEO, to get the bonuses and the raises and the fighting. Well, isn't that going to eventually cause a work shortage, because everybody wants to be the boss? Not everybody can do the grunt work if they all want to be the boss. Well, that's how societies have gotten through is forced labor. Slavery, right? Going back from the very beginning, that's how buildings and society was built, is forced labor. How do you keep that going? How do you keep that going? Well, you have to adapt. And then you have to manipulate society and how people look at it, their expectations. You got to take church out. Got to take that going. There got to be a separation, because the fundamentals, again, were the whole book on Judges. Literally, the book is the Judges of how God wanted it to actually work. But us and us and the Nephilim, we trip ourselves up constantly. You know what I mean? But there's clear evidence now of this all across everywhere.
Dude, I was diving into the Universe 25 experiment. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that was this whole idea that this guy created this utopia for rats because he wanted to see what would happen eventually with the society of rats if all the needs were met. And essentially it got to this point where I'm not going to re-explain the whole entire experiment, but the main portion that I wanted to kind of dive into is the fact that once there wasn't enough roles for people to fill in society, then they started getting lost and not knowing what to do. And we've kind of gotten to that point, and we were talking about it on Bizarre Inquiries recently, Orin and I, about it. But, we've gotten to a point in society where, like you mentioned, like if everybody wants to be the CEO, everybody wants to be this, you get to a point where all those roles are filled and there's nowhere for anybody to go. So you get stuck in this reoccurring mundane cycle of never being able to escape it. And it's just this continuous rat race. And it's like, it's something I've seen firsthand in the cannabis industry working in Michigan. You have like the head grower, you have a supervisor, and then you have like the couple leads, and that's about it for the higher positions. Once those 5 positions are filled at a place and they have their people, there's no moving up for anybody. So everybody is just at this point where they're completely busting their ass to try to get ahead, but there's no financially getting ahead because no place has the ability to give that extra money. There's no position to get ahead. So we're falling into the spot where like everybody is essentially giving up. And it's not that like the newer generations are lazy. It's just that, they have nothing to show for the time and effort that they've put in. Like, I'm a millennial, I've been working since I was like 15. It's not that I'm lazy by any means. Like I've been busting ass since the time that I started working, like working physical labor jobs, all of this stuff. And, we're in the generation where we're taught that hard work will get you ahead. It'll get you somewhere. But what happens when we have an entire generation where we've been taught that hard work will get you somewhere, but all we've done is bust our asses and we have not even a house to show for it like the previous generations did, unless you were lucky and you fell into like a good spot. Like it's, again, not that the generations are lazy or anything. It's just that like we're getting to a point where there's nowhere for anybody to go. Like, and I'm not saying that like mass depopulation is like a thing that needs to be done or anything. It's just that like people need to find a new way to fulfill themselves other than this rat race, because people are going to continue on with this mental illness pandemic as long as people don't feel fulfilled. And that being said, it's not necessarily even work. Like for me, running the show, doing this podcast, stuff that, you know, I'm never going to be rich and famous off this stuff. I do it because I thoroughly enjoy it. It gives me something to do. It gives me a passion to move towards. So at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I go to work, I make my money, but, you know, I'm not defined by that anymore because I have a passion. I have something that gives me fulfillment. But for all the people that are just busting their ass at work all day and they're so tired they can't do anything, they just come home, watch a TV show, go to sleep, and they're just stuck in the cycle. It's like you got to eventually find a way to like break away from that. Otherwise, again, you're just going to keep falling down this inevitable collapse of society. And just it's a weird thing to think about of like, how would you potentially correct this problem? And it's something that I've been thinking about. And the whole universal income concept, like I'm not pro that. I'm not pro the ideas of people having that grasp on you, but like the whole barter and trader concept that, you know, I have this skill, you have this skill. This is a skill I thoroughly enjoy doing. This is a skill that you thoroughly enjoy doing. I don't like doing that skill you have. I don't like doing the skill you have. Let's trade back and forth. We're both doing our passions, but we're both getting what we need. And in turn, we're getting everything that we like. There has to be a new type of system. And I'm always talking about Star Trek on the show, but they have this whole idea in Star Trek that there's not money in that society. The whole idea is that people will join, you know, the academy, they'll join the Federation, you know, because they want to feel fulfilled. They want to feel progressed. They're not making money off of the things they do anymore. It's a matter of fulfillment. And that just shows that, again, these weird underlying ideas that they put inside media that, you know, it's not about money. It's not about that. And it shows it primarily like in that show, like that utopian idea of society. It's about doing something that makes you feel fulfilled regardless of the money. As long as your needs are met, it doesn't matter how much money you make off of it as long as you feel fulfilled. Then that's this hard spot that we're falling into society now where it's like, how do we figure this out? Like there are possible solutions, but how do we get this push to happen where we can move into this new idea of society when you have all of these elitists that, again, are controlling us with this gold, pushing us back into this more materialistic, reptilian mind way of thinking instead of this progressive new way that we could essentially completely eliminate mental illness and depression and all of this if we could just take these couple steps to move into a new idea of what society should be.
Oh, dude. So Jesus, when he mentions tax collector the first time, he's talking, and I don't remember word for word. Forgive me, but it basically says, you know, the evil guys, the bad guys, and the tax collector. Same sentence, same group, same idea. I don't know if I know you're familiar with Mike Rowe. He's Mr. Working class and, you know, labor guy. He actually was saying something really interesting the other day about what we're talking about. Trump has, you know, brought all these jobs or potential jobs to come in, but we are already at a labor shortage. Super huge deficit in the manufacturing, and it's not because we don't have the people. We have more people, right? It's because of it was because of a lot of different things, but basically it's just people not working in those jobs.
People are willing to put in 12 hours a day, breaking their backs and not even be able to afford a house or have to go home and live with roommates. Like people they would rather take the easy job and go live with roommates than take the back-breaking one and be in the same position.
And that's exactly it. That's the nucleus in this whole thing. So when he's talking about this, he makes an interesting point, and that's basically the nicest, most PG way to say this was that from the very beginning, all societies, all major societies, were built on slavery. Not slavery the way that, we unfortunately look at it now, of forced labor, right? Basically, who in their right mind is going to work tirelessly, hours and hours, just like you said, 12-hour days, making bricks and then building a pyramid? No one's going to choose to do that. So it was forced labor. And that's how societies all societies have been made, is by that. You could almost reckon that societies may not be able to be created or built or sustained without that, right? Because if that's what built it, and no one's going to volunteer to do the super, super nasty grunt work, well, you got to force people to do that, right? Genghis Khan didn't take over, what he did, because he was nice and was like, hey, look, I'm a good dude. No, it was forced. It's forced. That's the way things go. So that goes back to what we're saying of what do you do now? Slavery's, we've woken up. Society has aged, and we're walking with nice clothes on, and we're industrial revolution. Things changed. How do you keep that business model? How do you keep being an Anunnaki without coming out and exposing yourself? Right? Because you cannot without forced labor. You cannot. That's probably we can confirm that that's a thing. Is you don't go to work because you're bored at home. You know what I mean? Just like you said. So how do you do that? Well, you have to change the way that everybody looks at things. And then, in my opinion, that's when the whole American dream, like we just said, pops into place. Because how else are these companies getting rich? You can't force us to work for you anymore. You can't force people. So how do you force it? Well, you tax the crap out of them. You give them no choice.
Make people debt slaves. That's how you do it.
Debt slaves. And how do you trick them? Oh, well, let's do this whole like American dream thing and trick them into working really, 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 really hard to hope that they get a promotion or hope that they can stop working hard now.
You get a house on credit. You guys will pay us over time. You get a car on credit. You'll pay us over time. Once you get stuck into all these contracts, now you can't stop working because all of those things will get taken back from you. Hence the whole debt slave concept.
Bam. So that's again part of the Great Deception. All this stuff's connected, and then you get that little sliver of life after. Because, again, to go back to Judges and God's opinion on kings and stuff, that's not what we were supposed to do. We're supposed to enjoy life. You're supposed to know your family, spend time with your family, know your neighbor. You're supposed to help each other out, and you trade and you barter, and you do fairness. And there's a whole lot of stuff in the Bible about fair scales, and and the negativity of discussion of taxes is clear. That I keep harping on taxes again. I've got a chip. I hate the way that we're being tricked as humans. But all that is, how do you keep that going? How do you keep humans making you rich when now that, especially now with like entrepreneur and you can do your own thing? I managed union through COVID. That was ridiculously tough, mentally tough. But what the government did was basically over the entire world basically was change everybody's mindset on life and work and what they want and how they want to get it. So, we're still like trying to get out of this hole that they've put us in when at any point we could all just say, you know what, I'm not paying taxes anymore. I'm not doing that. And because there's even, I went down the rabbit hole on this too, where the wording in income taxes is basically, it's a voluntary thing.
IRS, Internal Revenue Service. What does revenue mean? It's creating money on the inside. Like literally, like just the name IRS doesn't say like, oh, we're taxing for any good. It's literally a group that is intended to create revenue from inside the country.
Yeah. Like the wording is it's when you file your taxes, it's voluntary. Meaning the way that they try to, and I'm not a lawyer or any of that fun stuff, but like the way the trick is like, well, it's voluntary for you to do it on your own, but you have to do it.
I like the idea that they're always like, how much do you owe? Like they're making you do. It's almost like a contract that it's like, you can't deny that you owe them money if they make you do the math yourself, kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Well, you didn't pay enough this year, so you need to pay more. It's like, what? What? No. No.
Dude, like I owed the IRS from last year, and I'm on the phone with them going through all this stuff, and they're like, multiple times they ask me how much I owe. Like, shouldn't you, like, you guys in the Internal Revenue Service, you guys should have how much I owe on record. So you guys are going off of my number on what I say that I owe, and you guys have no record of any number that I owe other than the number that I gave you that I owe.
And that don't work anywhere else. You go get groceries, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna need $20 more." It's like, no, man, no, I got just paid. So yeah, again, man, and if I think I made it clear, it super frustrates me because we've been tricked, for so many, and now we're finally starting to wake up of like something's not right here about society and the way it works. And again, to go back to what I said, if you look at the end result of whatever the target is like, that's your answer right there. If all of this stuff goes through, are we going to be happier and better off? Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That whole stuff with the USAID, if you're familiar with all that craziness, is like, how long has society actually been about to collapse? But not enough of us put our foot down. You know what I mean? Like, for how long has it been like, ooh, if they wake up, we're in trouble?
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than the price of a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts or premium video versions of the show, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits and 7-day free trials available. Now let's get back into it. I mean, look at how many times they've, moved up the roof on what the national debt is. I mean, that just shows that we're always like right there about to collapse, and they're like, all right, we're just going to raise it higher. Everything's all good now. That just shows that we're literally like sitting on top of a super fragile house of cards, and all it takes is if somebody wiggles a little bit wrong one day, the whole entire system might collapse. But, their hope is that as soon as it starts wiggling, they try to, everybody stay still for a second. Let's see what happens.
Well, and then, what's crazy, I don't know if you ever saw the Netflix documentary on the Girls Gone Wild thing. Joe, it's not Rogan. I can't think of the guy's name. Joe something. Well, anyways, in that documentary, he said something, and I'm surprised they didn't edit it out because it was like, oh my gosh, they probably just figured like not enough people are going to watch this thing to see it. But he literally, at the peak of Girls Gone Wild getting discovered and getting the negative attention and all this stuff, he says it. The dude Joe says it. He got a call from a friend in Congress, and he was like, yeah, man, they needed help. Something big was getting ready to come out about, I guess Clinton was the president at the time, whatever president was. He's like, something big was getting ready to come out. So I had a guy, and he asked me if they could kind of use me, and I wouldn't really get jail time, but it would be used as a distraction. So I said, figure, and this is literally him saying it. He was like, so I just, that's cool, whatever.
It's like the whole Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial, because there's a bunch of weird stuff going on behind the scenes when that was happening. But everybody look over here at this trial about a girl taking a shit in a bed.
Dog, so we already think that happens. We already think, like, hey, is this a distraction? And then one of the distractions admits to being a distraction, right? In a Netflix documentary, says, I had a friend in Congress call me, blah, 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 blah.
Just like the Epstein and what I think's happening with the P. Diddy thing, it's just a matter of like, all right, there's too much heat. We got to give somebody up. But nothing ever ends up happening to that person on the back end. Like Epstein supposedly killed himself. Did he kill himself, or is he just somewhere else hanging out with the elites behind the scenes? I mean, like same with the P. Diddy thing. Is this guy actually ever going to serve any jail time? Is any of these lists going to actually come out? No, it's all just a distraction. And before any of these people ever actually serve any jail time, anything, either they'll get killed or they'll get off on it somehow. Like, it's almost like watching, like an old like cartoon with like a supervillain. It's like at the end, Batman may throw him into jail, but he's gonna run away with the ha 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 into the darkness just to pop up for the next adventure. Like.
Oh, so I think now, man, Epstein is being used to trick us up at this point now. Epstein was just a cog, just like Diddy. So the basis of Epstein is no one knows how he got his money. No one knows how he got this and this. He was a banker or whatever it was, but there's no record of him doing any of this stuff, right? We know the foundations of that. Who bought the island? Because that island came up for sale and it was quietly purchased and whatever the case. A dude with the same background, literally. A dude with the same background, a guy, a billionaire that did this and this. There's not a lot of record on him, and blah, 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 blah. Epstein was just a dude being used, and now he's a distraction of the actual entity or the party or the group, whatever you want to call it. Same with Diddy. They were just people that were involved, and they were being used. And now that he is in the light, well, focus on Epstein. Focus on Epstein because they own the media. Like everyone already knows that, right? We already know that. So we know that we can't trust the media. So the fact that the media keeps talking about Epstein. At this point now, I think that we can wrap it up. It's got nothing to do with Epstein. That island's already been bought quietly, and it's still in operation. Right, nothing's changed, and I mentioned Ian Carroll. He jumps in all this stuff. There is no list, right? There is no list, and also those pictures and the videos. You don't want those coming out because that's child porn, right? So we don't need that to be released. We have everything that we absolutely need. We have it all already, right? Pam Bondi, she's not going to bring out anything crazy, nothing like new, because we already have it all.
And then, ironically, to throw it into the one that was the minor that was supposedly involved with Prince Henry, if I'm not mistaken, one of the ones from the royal family, she killed herself, right? So just another loose end that got rid of.
Yeah, forced suicide. Poor thing. You know what I mean? Wish she get shot twice in the head or something like that. You know what I mean?
It's like the Clinton kill list. Like, what was that one really good one they had where the guy hung himself from a tree and then shot himself in the stomach with a shotgun?
Yes. Or, oh my gosh, Obama's chef. Yo, listen, anybody else on this planet that has a personal chef die found naked right outside of their house and then lies that they weren't actually there, because he did, like, it came out that he wasn't there, and then he came out that this is factually that he was there. Anybody else would have been carted off.
Yeah, that's a calling card, I feel like. It's like one of those things that it's like the media isn't going to question it, but anybody that knows is like, all right, this is a sign, don't mess with me. That's exactly what it is.
Plain and simple. So and there's two sins that have been tripping humans up the entire time from day one. It's lust, sexual debauchery, and child sacrifice. Child sacrifice obviously comes from the first sin and the heel and the skull and the prophecy of Jesus coming back. But the sexual depravity, the debauchery, comes from something, a manipulation of something great God gave us, right? Man and woman relationship, all that stuff, that is a beautiful thing. So of course it gets trashed and tarnished. And then of course, it shows how lust is horrible because angels fell to it, basically. So it's just the constant thing over and over and over and over again. That's that group. That's what they've been doing. And think about everybody that bounced out of town as soon as Diddy got charged or whatever. Everybody bounced. Everybody gets out of town. The Nickelodeon logo is the same as the island. You ever see that?
Yeah.
The Nickelodeon splat is the same. It's the same design as the actual island. Like, it's all there, man. It's all there.
Even before that, it was the foot, which also goes into some other weird stuff. But I mean, I've said it a million times on the show, dude. I think these people are like an archetype. Like, I think that it's a job that gets filled. And then once these people are in this position, of course, like with power comes corruption. So once they start flying a little bit too close to the sun, then they're like, all right, we got to kick this guy out and we got to cut all of our loose ends. And I definitely think that there are people that played this off well their entire life, such as Hugh Hefner. I think Hugh Hefner was exactly playing the same card as Epstein and as P. Diddy, except he was quieter about it. But the whole intention for this is, I've heard a lot of people talk about this, that within the elite circles, power isn't within money. Power is within favors and blackmail. And if you can get anybody that you can think of to have relations with somebody and you record them, that is ultimate control over them. It doesn't matter how much money they have. Like, you can get them to do stuff that is beyond money at that point. So of course you have to have these people planted. And most of the time it's something like, you know, I went to go hang out with P. Diddy and, you know, we're having this party and you hear a bunch of these stories and, you know, they went into the back room and they're doing this stuff. And it's like, those people are at this turning point where it's like, you know, you fall into this aspect of trying to fit in with everybody around you. So most of these people end up doing whatever this depraved act is that's happening in this bedroom off to the side or in whatever. But there's the few that walk away, and those few that walk away, you know, you end up seeing videos of these people online and they're talking about the Hollywood elites, and they have these videos that come out that are like, oh, I am not suicidal. And then next thing you know, you got like a Trevor Moore who supposedly got drunk and got pushed off of a balcony, even though he was talking out about the elites. You have Isaac Cappy, who had this video, who's like, I am not suicidal. And if I get killed, a video is going to come out about Tom Hanks. Next day, dude jumps off of a bridge into a freeway. Like, you know, it's like a scare tactic, because it's like, once you get into that position, it's either you're doing something that is morally beyond fucked up, or you could probably never fully live with yourself, which is why there's such a disconnect with a lot of these people. Or if you're not one with the party, you've seen too much. That's it. You're done.
And I think too, like, I think that you can't accumulate a certain amount of money. Like, there's a threshold, because I kind of see a pattern there of, once you get to a certain, it's all about money, because that's how you can trick us, right? That's the root of all evil for us as humans. So you dangle in the cash and all that stuff, you can trick a lot of people. But I think that there's a threshold of what you can be used for, and you don't get past a certain amount of money without having to go through that door or be invited into that room. And I think that this, you can look at stars, celebrities, movie, music, anything. Look at them, the beginning of their career. They're hungry, they're trying, they're this and that. They have this one image, and then somehow at some point, something happens to them. And it's all, look, you mentioned Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks he was one of my favorite actors. Big dude, Money Pit. Like, he was good. Something happened. Forrest Gump. Right, he went to that threshold, and now he is an oddball. Oprah. Right, you can just go down the line of people that once they get to a certain point, they are absolutely different, undeniable, and there's something going on, and I feel like that's kind of how it goes. Is you can't get, I growing up, man. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be a rock star so bad. That was all I wanted to do. I wanted to tour and do all the stuff on MTV and all that stuff. I look at it differently now. I don't think that you can be in those worlds and be innocent. You know what I mean? Like, now, you don't always join it. Not all celebrities are bad, not all this and this, but you're around it and you are offered, hey, your career's here. If you want to go here, this is what we have to do. These are the rules. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of just how this thing goes. That's the hitting thing about success and money. Is it's a facade, and you can't get established without having to give up something of yourself. And men, unfortunately, where that goes. But it's like, that's behind the scenes. You can't. Yeah, this is how society works, and you can't get in here unless you can do this for us.
I mean, even on the flip side too, I feel like some of these people might, like, there's no making up for these things, but subconsciously they maybe think that they can make up for some of this stuff, which is why you see a lot of these people, trying to do charity work, trying to do this, trying to do that. Of course, there's always a facade that they look like they're doing charity work, but it's actually something totally different, like the National Wildlife Organization with the whole Panda Eyes thing. But that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But, just to throw in some of these like celebrities throwing in these like weird context for things like Jimmy Savile. Everybody knows the horrors that guy did. But some of his last interviews, he was saying weird stuff like, I hope that one day when they're looking over everything that I did at the pearly gates, they'll look on this page and say, oh, but then they'll look at this page and say, okay, well, this isn't too bad. Like, they think that they can like justify these terrible things by doing things on the reverse, but I don't think that it will ever work like that, because I kind of feel like the fallen angels, I'm sure there's a portion of them that have been trying to do this, where after they committed this ultimate act, they got casted down. They got to a point where they're like, all right, maybe to a certain extent I can make up for my actions, but there's just certain things that once you pass that threshold, there is no going back. And it doesn't matter how much good you do. There's just these natural line orders that there's just no going back from. And when it comes to this, like, destruction of innocence, touching of children, all of this, like, elite trafficking, like, all of this type of stuff, once you pass that threshold, there is no going back. It doesn't matter how much charity work you do, whatever, like, again, you're never going to be able to make up for it. And just to throw in just like a weird thought on this, there are some of these celebrities that do this stuff, and you're like, all right, you can feel in your stomach that there is something true to it. Like, just a prime example, Chester Bennington and, why am I forgetting his name?
Chris Cornell.
Yep. Doing like, the Secret Children and all that stuff. Like, that you can feel it in your heart that there's actually something good that they're trying to do with this. But on the flip side, there are these other celebrities that no matter what you do, you just have this feeling like they're a piece of shit. Like, the ongoing joke has always been like Bono. It's like, no matter how much good this guy does, like, why does everybody feel like he's just this awful piece of shit? It's like, maybe because there is something more to it, that if this guy is that threshold of rock star, imagine the depraved acts that he's done to get to that point. And that's why there's this subconscious human reading that maybe subconsciously he knows he's a piece of shit. So he gives off this energy. So everybody's picking up on him, and they're just like, there's a lot of celebrities like this. Like, Oprah is an undeniable one. She does all this charity stuff, but all the stuff she's involved in on the backside of the scene, like, you just know it's not authentic, and you can feel it. And it doesn't matter how much good they do. You just know that there's no good intention behind it. And the only good intention that they might have behind it is for themselves. And they're just out for themselves to make themselves look better.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Like, you look at Bill Gates and like nihilism and stuff, and you were kind of just saying it, and that's what made me think of it. It's almost like they went into that door, they went into that room, and they got initiated into that group. And then they started thinking, well, you might be right. Because nihilism is like the beginnings of, it can go down to fascism and then communism. But nihilism is basically like, it's humans are the problem. Right? We have too much stuff. We do too much. We shouldn't have all this. We have all this stuff. And that's when the climate change and all that stuff comes into place. So it's basically because of who we are and our excess, we're bad for the planet. So it takes the emphasis from humans and then puts it onto the planet. Right? We need to take care of the planet. It's like we were talking about earlier. So you got to take care of the planet. What's the problem with the planet? Well, the humans that are on it, and it's our pollution, and it's the CO2, and it's this and this and this and this and this.
I mean, that goes into the true definition of nihilism, the rejection of all religions and moral principles, and the belief that life is meaningless. Just to throw that in.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, it's just like Thanos, right? Thanos, he had to take out half the population, blah, blah, blah. And it was a good thing in his mind. He was trying to save us for overpopulation and stuff. So it's like they get there, and then, the group, the deep state, tell them, hey, look, here's the problem. And then they get behind this agenda that is, you want to take our food supply, you want to take our water supply, you want to take our choices away, and you want to tax us. You want to have us dependent on you for every single thing. But then the underlying factor here is that you're doing away with us, doing away with humans. You're taking away their health, right? The food, their health, and this and this and this. So it's like they get into there, and then that's their agenda. Bill Gates is horrible the way that he looks at depopulation and stuff, and how he comes out and says it. And
there's countries he's not even allowed in anymore.
Dog. And it is clearly agreeing with the bad party, right? In layman's terms, is like, yeah, you're right. Humans are the problem. We need to look out for the earth. So then they attack these crazy agendas that basically just will end up reducing us. And it's like, again, if you really look, if you listen, you can see what they're actually fighting for, what they're trying to do to us, man.
Yeah, once you start seeing it, it's completely undeniable. Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you enjoyed the show and you think I deserve it, then please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcatcher you happen to use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show. And we are back, so let's get back to it. Kind of starting to wrap up since we've been running for about 2 hours now, and I definitely want to come back for a round 2 because I know that we could probably dive into a bunch of stuff because we opened up a bunch of cans of worms that we're like, all right, we'll touch that a different time. But at the end of the show, we definitely kind of started getting into a little darker facet of things, but hopefully to leave the show on a bit of a high note, I always like to end the show with some words of wisdom. So if there was any words of wisdom that you might want to bestow on the listeners today, man, what might it be?
Listening is a big thing. Is there a God? Is there other stuff? Is there this and this and this? It's easy to find it out. It's easy to talk to God. Listening is not easy. Everything that we've been talking about, the pieces and the hitting meanings and all this stuff. If you listened, you paid attention, you'd see all this stuff. So we need to focus on listening and trying to see what we're being told. You want to know God? Talk to him and just listen. You want to know what you're supposed to do in life? Ask him and just listen. That is a big thing for me in my 3 years on my journey was learning how to listen, and how to be guided. How can you be guided? You're a listener and you follow directions. So that'd be my thing, man. That's a big thing.
Ain't that the truth, man? Definitely some great words of wisdom to live by. And I know that we only kind of scratched the surface a little bit of your book in the beginning, but if anybody wanted to come and find your book, they want to find any of the work or writing or anything that you're doing, or even possibly contact you to be a guest on their show or to get into one of these great conversations, where can people find you on the internet and where can people find all your stuff?
Yep, 5stones.bigcartel.com is my e-commerce for the book. I'm on Instagram, eadamfarris. eadamfarris.substack.com is my main writing source. I'll take their quick reads. I'll take a topic and I'll dive into it. I use scriptural evidence, and I have a YouTube page for longer blogs or anything that I want to really get into in more depth. That's eadamfarris as well. I'm an accessible guy. Holler at me. I would love talking about this stuff.
Well, man, I appreciate you making the time to come on today. And like I said, we're definitely going to have to hit a round 2. Glad you hit me up, man, because it was a great conversation. You always know it's a good one if it ends up running 2 hours. And I felt bad cutting it off, but I want an excuse to talk to you another time. So
I appreciate that. I'm down, brother. Yeah, we'll talk about some dates.
If you guys enjoyed today's conversation and you guys want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you is exactly how the show grows, so thank you guys. And if you guys would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys get a hold of me through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the two that I am the most active on. You guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which is available up at the top of the link tree. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is through the hotline number, and that number is 313-364-1551. And you guys can text or call that, whatever's easier for you guys. And don't worry, I won't end up answering on the first ring or anything like that, so don't hesitate to call, of course. And if you guys have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show, I Know Squatch, Snarlio Natural Products, Cryptotheology, and Big Ape Threats. And our friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule. with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those is available down in the show notes. And every single thing I mentioned throughout the show is all available on the link tree, which is also available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. I'm Dr. D's taking a watercraft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to